Our last speaker, last but not least, is Phil Simmons. I've already spoken to you about him. He is an emeritus associate professor of English at Lake Forest College in Illinois, and over the last couple of years has moved back with his family. Catherine's in the audience here. His two beautiful children in a home that I've watched evolve over the last couple of years in a beautiful site near Sandwich. And you've already heard me speak about the wisdom and the eloquence that he's brought to the lives of many people there, as well as a group of students who were participating in the Living with Life-Threatening Illness course that Susan Block and Andy Billings have been putting on. So without any further ado, Phil Simmons.
Cursive sound then.
Is it, let me just check. Okay, you come on in.
Can you make sure that's
Is there any way
Just swing that out sideways. No, just straight out.
And is that okay on the right side?
No, it's not. Let's get it right there. Okay. It's a real honor to be here in the presence of Rabbi Kushner and Dr. Mount, and I'm very grateful to Dan Lowenstein for inviting me here and encouraging me to put this together. I must say, finding myself here is somewhat of a surprise. Then again, I'm surprised by much that happens in my life these days. I ask myself, what am I, an English professor, doing talking to doctors and medical students? I'm not licensed for this. I suppose I could present myself as a patient with a diagnosis of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, but being a patient is something I try to spend as little time doing as possible. Being a patient is boring. To me, being a patient means sitting in a waiting room reading issues of Time magazine dating from the Ford administration. Where do you all get these magazines? There must be some special service. No, I'm not going to speak as a patient tonight. I'm going to speak as a human being. My medical condition is relevant, if at all, only because it's helped me see some things about the situation all of us are in. For on some level, to say that I'm dying is like saying I'm breathing. It's something all of us do. Each of us, each individual soul is, as William Butler Yeats wrote, fastened to a dying animal. Those of us with terminal illnesses merely have been blessed, and I mean blessed, with having the facts of our mortality held constantly before us. So I'm not here to talk about healing patients. That's your business. Nor am I here to talk about healing doctors, as if doctors as a group were especially in need of it. Doctors may have their particular needs, but that doesn't mean they're any more screwed up than the rest of us. Fact is, just about all of us, no matter our intelligence or skill or profession, are pretty clumsy at the business of dying. And to separate patients from doctors as if they had different needs for healing is a mistake of the first order. We're in the same boat. Understanding this, feeling in your bones that your patient's journey is your journey, carrying this awareness with you into every examining room you enter, can make the difference between being a competent doctor and a great one. Now, being clumsy at dying isn't by itself such a big deal. Clumsy or not, we all manage the feat one way or another. The bigger problem is that to be clumsy at dying is also to be clumsy at living. To put it the other way around, to be skilled at dying is to be skilled at living. Philosophy, the love of wisdom, begins with the question, what makes for a good life? The most ancient answer to this most ancient of questions is that if we would live well, we must know what it means to die well. The Psalm says, in the midst of life, we are in death. The psalmist didn't write this just to bum you out. The point is to bring an awareness of death into the midst of our living, and by doing so, to bring ourselves more fully, richly alive. You here tonight know, more concretely and thoroughly than most, that our bodies are temporary arrangements. And yet, at its core, the practice of medicine struggles against this basic fact. We know we can't be permanent, but we'd sure like to be a little less temporary, and are willing to devote our energy, skill, imagination, and cold cash to that end. But true healing, of the kind I mean, begins with failure. Healing begins when we can't fix what's broken, when we can no longer patch up or pump out the sinking ships that bodies become, when all our skills and good intentions are dust thrown against the wind. Healing begins, if we let it, when marriages fail and careers crash, when we lose loved ones and our own cherished images of ourselves. Healing begins when we grasp the truth in Bob Dylan's lyric, just when you think you've lost everything, you find out you can lose a little bit more. Could you push that further away? I wish we could learn this lesson more easily, but apparently we're just too dense to get in any other way. I know I was. When I was diagnosed with ALS 8 years ago, I was 35 years old, and everything was going great. I had a tenure-track job at a good liberal arts college, had 2 beautiful, healthy children, and a loving marriage. I wore fitted shirts, drove a German automobile, had interesting shrubbery. But age 35, I was about to discover, is a hinge year, half of our biblical allotment of 70, a year when, I'll be polite, stuff happens. It's the age at which Dante makes his journey into the Inferno. I guess it was time to make a journey of my own. Now, when I got my bad news, my initial reaction, like most people's, was to look for a solution. When something's broken, we want to fix it. Fixing things isn't just a personal habit, it's our culture's obsession. We're trained to see life as a set of problems to be solved. From childhood on, we're taught to be little Aristotles. We observe the world, we break down what we see into its component parts, we identify causes and effects. We perceive problems and set about solving them, laying out our solutions in ordered sequences like the instructions for assembling a child's bicycle. This habit is perhaps strongest in those with a scientific background, and it is certainly strong in me, the son of a Harvard chemistry major and electrical engineering PhD, the brother of an internist, and also the brother of a PhD in neurophysiology, the kid whose childhood dinner conversations were full of the Big Bang Theory and how to design a magnetic levitating car and the advantages of digital over analog communication. The kid who had to major in physics in order to get science out of his system before going on to become an English professor, but who even then had to work evolutionary theory and quantum mechanics into his courses. When this guy learned he had an illness with no treatment and no cure, you bet he saw it as a problem to be solved. So, given the problem of my illness, I proceeded rationally, seeking out the best doctors, pursuing the available treatment options, participating in a major clinical trial, keeping up with the research, and so forth. But even as I was doing all this, I was entering into what I can only describe as a different reality altogether, propelled there by the growing awareness that I had come up against a problem that couldn't be solved. Our usual response to an unsolved problem is to say that it merely needs more work, more research, more funding. But in the reality I found myself entering, there was another alternative. That life is not reducible to a set of problems. I was coming to understand that at its deepest levels, life is not a problem, but a mystery. The distinction, which I borrow from the philosopher Gabriel Marcel, is fundamental. Problems are to be solved, true mysteries are not. Personally, I wish I could have learned this lesson without having to give up my tennis game. But each of us finds his or her own way into mystery. At one time or another, each of us confronts an experience so powerful, bewildering, joyous, or terrifying that all our efforts to see it as a problem are futile. Each of us reaches the end of reason's rope, and when we do, we can either grip harder and get nowhere, or we can let go and fall. For what does mystery ask of us? Only that we be in its presence, that we fully, consciously hand ourselves over. That is all, and that is everything. When I learned to let go of solutions, when I learned to see life not as my unsolved problem, but as the mystery in which I dwell, I started on the path of true healing. I say I started on the path, for I'm not there yet. The journey goes on. Dante made it out of the inferno, through purgatory, to paradise. Mostly I'm in purgatory, I guess, stuck in a body that doesn't answer to the body's needs. I spend entire days wishing I could more effectively kick the dog. But there are moments, ordinary ones. Watching my daughter comb her hair, my son read a book, my wife settle a cup in its saucer, when I am filled with a gratitude that lifts me beyond my limitations, and I feel I've already gained my perch in paradise. At such times I wouldn't trade my life for any other. Now, having said all this, I don't want to suggest that by embracing life's mystery, we lose our problem-solving nature. If I'm a mystic, I remain a rational one. If I have a toothache, do I embrace the experience, expressing my gratitude for the richness that it has brought to my life? Yes, but I also go see a dentist. We don't stop our striving. We don't stop fixing things. We don't stop doing what good remains within our power to do. But those of us on the healing path have learned to live within a rich paradox. We must act for the good while letting go of our attachment to results. This doesn't mean that we don't care what happens. On the contrary, when we're fully healed, we find ourselves living in such a way that our every word and deed aligns with our highest commitments. And so we reach a place where everything, absolutely everything, matters. At the same time, we learn to see every act, great or small, setting a broken leg, washing a child's face, picking lint off a sweater, against the luminous background of mystery. To be healed means to see our everyday actions and ordinary moments in the largest possible context, within the mystery of broken lives and broken hearts, the mystery of our origins and our ends, the mystery of love and sudden joy. Do I have my last page? Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Momentary existential terror. Sudden joy. And when such healing happens, when we know in every breath that in the midst of life we are in death, we can then come out on the other side of the psalmist's saying, into a new freedom, discovering also that in the midst of death we are in life. To be healed is to discover that in the midst of loss, frustration, failure, and grief, in the midst of all that reminds us of our imperfect and temporary natures, we are fully, miraculously alive. There's a Zen Buddhist story about the seeker who went in search of a sage said to live high on the mountain. When at last the seeker found him, the sage, an old man, was carrying a heavy sack up the path. The seeker said, "Master, can you tell me what the experience of enlightenment is like?" The old man set down his heavy sack and began dancing joyfully on the mountainside. The seeker said, "Yes, I understand. And can you tell me what it's like after enlightenment?" The old man picked up his sack and continued trudging up the path. Healing doesn't put an end to suffering and sorrow. We'll continue to carry the heavy sack of our humanness all the days of our lives. But peace comes from accepting our burdens and moving forward up the path. When we have let go of solutions, when we have let go of expectations, when we have let go of happiness itself, then we can also let go of suffering, let go of all that would bind us to diminished versions of ourselves. When we do this, though the way be steep and our limbs weary, we will never forget how to dance. Thank you.